we say it here. We say it much
You really
slower.
have to come and listen to kindergartners.
But I think of that every single time now. And a roll call, please.
Sharon Stiltner here, Beth Engel. Here.
Yeah.
Tim Itzikowski.
Here.
Charles Placetel.
Here.
Susan Trebilcock. Here. Andrew Goulet.
Here.
Michael Darrenowski.
Here.
Okay, Mr. Pretend.
As written in the weekly memo today, January is School Board Recognition Month, so we're going to take a few minutes this evening to honor the service of our school board members and thank you for all that you do. And I'm going to begin presenting something on behalf of Governor Snyder and also our Representative Dan Lowers that he sent on behalf of the legislature. And I'd like to take a second just to read this for you. It said, "A special tribute to the Algonac Board of Education. Let it be known that it is with great pleasure we stand in recognizing the Algonac Board of Education for their vital contributions and crucial role they play in the education of our children. This recognition stands for the innovation, planning, and personal commitment that these individuals have contributed and given in order to ensure that all students have what they need to achieve and succeed. Too often we neglect to recognize the dedication and hard work of these men and women who represent us. Board members contribute countless hours each year leading their districts. Whether listening to staff and student concerns, crafting policies, or attending seminars and training sessions, board members are continuously advocating for improvement in student learning. Their many contributions to the Algonac community are both admirable and invaluable. These board members have defined the roles of good citizen and outstanding community member. The Algonac Board of Education is certainly appreciated and admired by all of the Algonac community. A special tribute, therefore, this document is signed and dedicated the Algonac Board of Education, and we offer our best wishes and thanks for all the years ahead. So, Mr. Goulet, on behalf of the legislature, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And each school has prepared a small presentation for you, and we will start with our upper levels first. Ms. Landrum is here on behalf of Algonac High School.
Hi, I'm here with two of our student council members who are going to do a little presentation for you. But before they start, I just want to thank you for all that you do. I know there's a lot of people out there that have no idea what you put in to our school district, and you're very much appreciated.
Am I going back here? Good evening. I'm Chris Snyder, Sergeant of Arms for Algonac High School Student Council. Here with me tonight is Shelby Mocklin, President of AHS Student Council.
In recognition of your hard, okay.
That's right.
Recognition of your hard work and dedication to Algonac Community Schools, Chris and I, on behalf of Algonac High School Student Council, would like to present you with your very own Brat Pack t-shirts and make you honorary Brat Pack members.
Some of you were able to attend our first annual Board Appreciation Basketball game on January 17th. For those of you who are unable to attend, we would like to give you your Rat Pack t-shirts and certificate of recognition.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. LaStage, on behalf of Algonquin Middle School.
So the young ladies that we're gonna present tonight aren't able to make it due to the snow days. But this year we started doing yearbook in-house during our seminar rotation and realized we needed some things to help it run more smoothly. So I bought a very nice Canon camera to donate to the yearbook committee on your behalf. And they'd also like to dedicate this year's yearbook to you guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And then the elementaries.
No, we said that with the flourish.
Our students got together and did some different things to honor and recognize you today. In front of you, you'll see the books that we do. They're dedicated for mine and Fairhaven's. Millside and Fairhaven's is for our libraries. And
Algonac Elementary, we are doing Science Olympiad this year, so those are the reference materials that the students need for Science Olympiad. So unfortunately, I do have to collect those tonight from students. They need them to start studying right away.
Mine you can go ahead and read for a while, but they were on the top 10 list of most wanted in our library. So that's how those were chosen. And we have 2 little clips. I had wanted to do this on my iPad, but we couldn't get that working today. Hook up.
As always with technology, you have to.
I didn't have a cord, so we'll just see for 2 seconds. This one is a couple grades at my building, Hillside. Mrs. Wilson actually wrote this little song that the kids sing. Thank you.
Val, you can just leave it up. You too.
Yeah, I know.
And now our Superstar Employee of the Month. It is my pleasure to award this month to the Administrative Assistant, Diane Hurtgan. Here's some of the wonderful things that her nominators had to say about her. Diane works diligently on state and federal compliance materials. Her attention to detail is commendable. And Diane's workload continues to expand, and she accepts the challenges with a smile and a positive attitude. Thanks again, and congratulations.
Congratulations.
Good job, boss. Next on the agenda, we were supposed to have Mr. Pat Yannick from RISA to come down to speak about the tech millage. He came down to the Rotary last Wednesday and did a phenomenal job explaining the millage, what it was about, the intention, and some of the budget issues that are related to it. Because of the weather circumstances, he couldn't make it this evening, but we are going to try and get him to the next board meeting, which is one day before the vote, so it will probably be a little bit more timely. So hopefully we can get Pat down for the next one. But if you're looking for more information tonight, we do have flyers available in the back next to the coffee machine. They can do a quick synopsis of that, and we will again hopefully get Mr. Yannick at the next board meeting.
Consent agenda items?
I'll make a motion, the Board of Education approves all consent agenda items, including agenda, minutes, personnel items, treasurer's report, and bills as listed items A through C.
Support. Supported. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Information items. Evaluation of the superintendent. Brian and I talked about this, not too long after he became the interim superintendent. My question was, how do we evaluate him? He's not a superintendent, he's not an administrator, but he's not really either one, but he's kind of both. And so, Brian did some checking in with Risa, and the information that we've received says that we do evaluate him as a superintendent. The extension recommendation is not for extension as a superintendent, it's for extension on his administrative contract, because he is an administrator who is tasked by the board with the duties of superintendent. So that's how it all fits to help it make sense. So he can be evaluated with using the same instrument. The extension piece have to do not with the superintendent's contract, but with the administrative contract. So we all have a copy of that to get done and turn into Sharon by the 10th of February. And anybody have anything else about that? Discussion regarding year-round school. Sharon. Okay, Sharon and Brian and I were at the earlier this month at the County Association of School Boards General Membership Meeting. And to back up a little bit, in December, Mr. DeGros came to the Executive Council meeting of the County Association of School Boards and was explaining to our committee members different things that were going on and things that Risa was working on and ideas that were kind of coming down the line. And he rattled off year-round school, redesigning what classrooms look like, how we present things. He rattled off 7 or 8 different items. And
let's look at.
And they showed a video. Well, he didn't show it at our meetings. He ran off these things, and because at our executive council meetings, we pick what is going to be presented at the general membership meeting. And he said, which one of those things do you think that the whole group should hear about? And we all looked at each other and said, well, we want to hear it all. So at our meeting a couple weeks ago, he put together staff from Risa and himself to a great degree, and did presentations on all of it. The one thing Brian and I were discussing later was the year-round school piece of it was very interesting. There was some very interesting information that came out during the presentation, including this video that Brian's going to show us first. And so we thought it would be a good idea, in keeping with we like to have a discussion about a topic or policies or whatever. Just this would be a good opportunity for us to hear recent updates. There have been more research by universities and other places about year-round school and summer learning loss and all those things. And so it's something that has been talked about in Algonac for a long time, off and on. It's not been popular before, but it's in Croslex and it's getting closer. And so we felt it would be a good idea for all of us to hear what we heard up at Risa and then some. So is that about right?
Yeah, that's very, very accurate. I think this is timely as well too, with the amount of school that we've been missing due to snow days, and it does make you think about summer learning loss. Mr. Latos and I talk every single morning about his daughter down in Anchor Bay, and really in the past month, because of illness and other things like that, she's been in school for 3 or 4 days. Is that right, Mr. Latos? And the amount of loss that's happening during that time. And I think that one universal truth that we can all agree upon is that we think that students of all backgrounds, all socioeconomic status, all abilities can learn. And we believe that they can learn at the same pace. But what some of the research is showing, and this is becoming more prevalent and more sources are verifying this, that the learning loss that happens over the summer is very, very determined and very, very segregated based on income factors. And we know that here in Algonac, we do have a bit of a socioeconomic gap. And so this video was shown by Mr. DeGrow, and we'll take a few minutes. And this was done by Brian Williams and titled Summer Learning Loss.
One from a middle-income family, the other from one of the millions of low-income American families. As the two kids head off to kindergarten, look what happens. The middle-income child starts out with a 6-month lead. The low-income child is already falling behind because of a lack of access to early reading and preschool education. During their year in kindergarten, in the same school and classroom, the two children will learn at about the same rate, so we'll move them both forward 9 months. But look what happens in that first summer between kindergarten and first grade. Our middle-income child moves ahead about a month in reading because learning of one kind or another continues over the summer. The low-income child falls back about 2 months. So when school begins again, when they go back for first grade, the gap between them has already widened. During first grade, again, they move ahead at about the same rate, another 9 months. That next summer, the activities and lifestyle of the middle-income family keep that child moving forward. But the low-income child has fewer opportunities to reinforce good habits like reading, and that child falls farther behind. Then we come to second grade, and again, our two children learn at the same rate. But the summer after second grade sets our low-income child back again, and our middle-income child moves forward again, and the gap widens again. By just the third grade, the two children are already far apart. By the end of fifth grade, the gap between the children is 2.5 to 3 years. It will keep growing through middle school. So you see, without addressing what's happening during the summer, it is impossible to ever catch up. It's impossible to close the gap. No matter how much high-quality learning goes on from September to June, every year the gap widens.
One of the things that and Mr. Brutin has already told me, we're going to be able to have this video posted on the district website. And there's an article from Time Magazine about the same thing that is also going to be posted there as well. So we wanted to bring this to Brian and Sharon. I agree. We wanted to bring this to the rest of you so we could all have a better understanding to see what, if anything, we need to do to put Algonac in a place where we can address those kinds of issues, like was spoken of out there and in the Time article. One of the things, as Croslex is doing it, and they started doing it on a voluntary basis, and they had 11 or 16 staff members said they wanted to participate in it, and they had enough students, 200 and some, whatever, at the elementary level, so it could be an opt-in, opt-out thing. Brian and I were talking, and that's, at some point, with the way the governor and the legislature have been funding schools, here's a little bit of money if you do this, and here's a little bit more money if you do that, and so on and so forth. There's going to come a point where it's going to be, guess what, people? It's year-round school. And where do we want to be ahead of that curve or not? That's my thinking. Is do we want to be, better prepared in a better position for when that happens?
What is the opposition in our district to year-round school, what are they saying that they don't want to happen?
There's a lot of things, Tim, that kind of come up. First of all, parents have kids at multiple ages. So if we did this at the elementary school, but didn't do it at the middle school, then all of a sudden you got kids on different schedules for vacations, for family things. That's usually one of the biggest things that we have. A lot of it too is misconception about, the idea of what a year-round school is. That assumption is that all of a sudden the kids are in session 240 days a year, and it's not the case. The breaks
It's like
are just
six
spread
weeks
out.
in a week or something. Isn't it?
So there's just, a lot of, I think, misinformation out there about some of it. But I think the biggest gap is just kind of this idea that if you do have kids in different schools, that's a big issue.
That's if we want to volunteer, but if it's implemented by the governor, then everybody will go to school year-round.
Well, most likely, eventually, that's where it's going to
I
end up.
think he's an advocate.
How long does Croswell have it?
This is their first year. This is
They're just,
no, this is this is the first year of it. And in the Times Herald article that Crystal did for us this weekend, they have a waiting list, and it's gaining popularity rapidly. If I had to put a guess, when the governor releases his budget within a week or two here, I think he's going to have some money earmarked for this. And some of the barriers that schools have to doing this is a lot of schools don't have the privilege of having air conditioning. That's not one of our issues that we do have. But there are transportation costs that do come along with this as well too. One point that Mr. DeGros made that really stuck with me is, it's very, very tough these days to put in interventions that are virtually free when it comes to it. And by simply shifting a calendar, this is something that can be done that has virtually no cost to it at all, that has been proven to increase learning in students. And so I would assume that the governor's going to come out with some money earmarked for it. I could be wrong in that, but they keep hinting at it. He said it in his state address. And I think that when he does, it would probably be wise of us to be in a position where we have a much firmer grasp of what it would really look like in the Algonac schools. There's other concerns that have come up that I've seen. When Crystal did that article for us this weekend, of course, then social media exploded, and which school is it going to be? And we're going to this automatically. We're only at the discussion phase of it, but some of the concerns started coming out. And for the high schools, summer jobs, that's definitely one that the people have voiced. And daycare costs have come up as a concern as well too, for those interim vacations that would come at the elementary levels as well. And so there are answers to those. They're not always the best answers in the world, but in schools that are doing year-round, they do have daycares that are set up, and they have reduced rates for some of those students during those interim blocks as well too. And so in what Andy and I talked about on our ride home from that dinner was, I think that the best way to approach this is to go to our parents with not just the theory of year-round school. Don't just say, here's the theory of it, what do you think, and come back at us. I think it's much more realistic, and it'll be a much more authentic conversation if we can go to our parents and say, here's what it will look like in Algonac, and hand it to them. Here's a calendar. Here's what it looks like. Here's where it would start in these grades. What do you think? Would you opt in? And from that point of view, I think parents can have something in their hands and really look at it and see, this is the calendar, would this fit? Would this fit my situation? And we aren't at that stage yet. That'll take some time with the committee. But I think that would be the best way to approach the public with it, and to be able to show providing this option now.
I think we have.
Well, it certainly offers an opportunity to balance this off with the lower income kids, so that their learning stays more constant and they don't lose it over the summer. And if it were on a voluntary basis.
And it'll strengthen our scores, it'll strengthen our district.
Is strictly elementary, or are they?
They're elementary right now with plans to go into the middle school next year.
Not all their own.
Can by any chance you do the whole school, the whole student body at one time? Or is that not a logical way would do small increments at a time?
I think the way the Croslex did it was, instead of mandating it, they did it, I would call it more a super pilot basis. And that was, again, allowing people the choice to opt in, so they didn't get the big resistance, and then it would allow people to look, see, and if they liked it, then to be able to join on to it. I think that the hardest way to do this would be to start at the top and work the way back. I think doing this 9 through 12 will be very, very, very difficult, just for the sheer fact of there are barriers, like there's not a good question to losing out on summer jobs. As much as we don't like to say this is a barrier, because it's not the most important thing, but we do know that interscholastic athletics do have value in what they do, and sports would play a big role in how those schedules would line up with coaching and things like that. I think that the best way to do this would be to start at the lower levels and then work its way up through. But again, this is something that I think a committee would provide a lot of value to, where we put our elementary principals on it, probably grab a couple of parents, and we probably would take a trip up to Croswell. And there is value in visiting a place and saying, how did it go? What would you have done differently? And learning from others along the way as well too. Their initiative seems to be gaining steam rather than losing it. And again, I think it'd be valuable to have multiple stakeholders take a look at this idea.
Any districts other than Croswell that's doing this?
Locally, I'm not aware.
I don't know about locally, but it's, there's some down in, I know Macomb County's got a couple, and so does Oakland County.
And Port Huron, they have an elementary that is considering it for next year. That was mentioned potentially. Cleveland, yeah.
Will we get any resistance from the union at all? How do our teachers and staff feel about it?
That'd be a good question, because we haven't had that discussion yet. Go ahead, Melissa.
Right. I can say that I'm a huge advocate and proponent of year-round school. So we've been very open about it at Algonac Elementary, because they've asked, and they have their concerns and different things about that. So some of them I think would be very willing to go to year-round. Others of them still have their concerns and their drawbacks as well. So I don't know that you're going to get all in or all out. I think you're going to get a mixed bag of what the
You think we'd lose staff over it?
Hmm?
You think we'd lose personnel over it?
No.
Well, if the Croslex example is like what Melissa's saying, if the Croslex example is true to form, then you're going to have some staff members that are going to volunteer for it. You know, I mean, not everybody has to do it, but you're going to have some people that are going to volunteer to do it because, like Melissa said, you know, they are passionate about and supportive of it.
Let's say we don't go to partial, say we just do the whole elementary level and not go to a volunteer thing.
Well, I mean, that's something we'd have to have studied.
Well, those are questions that.
There could be, you know, this is just my own opinion, okay, but there could be enough support for it where we would perhaps have more than one elementary building of people that wanted to do it. I mean, if it was portrayed, if it was shown to the public, the evidence, and like Brian said, the map and what it would look like and what it is going to be and how it's going to work and how it's going to affect you in a way that people understand, rather than, you know, on social media, there was mom, well, we boat during the summer and hang out and do stuff and whatever. Well, Croslex, their kids, according to that article, their year-round kids go to school 150 of the same days that regular school year kids go to school. So there's only 20 days difference of that time. It's just the way that it's spread out. So, and in the summer, they do 4-day weeks. They're off on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So, I mean, plus the breaks that are in there as well. So I think if it were, it could be a big deal here.
So bottom line kind of would be, you know, explore it and try to get a voluntary program going and let it grow from there. And people that are hesitant would be able to look and see how it was going, and then maybe it would grow.
And you gotta wonder, like Brian said, if the people in Croslex, you know, the first group of parents that volunteered to opt into it, you know, now they have a waiting list of people who sat back, watched it, and saw it working for other people, and decided that, hey, they wanted to do that too. I mean, so those are things that a committee of people that we'd have put together would figure out and come tell us about.
So Brian, when you say that this committee would map this out, sorry, Dave, I get that, cost too? I mean, when we say that, you know, well, maybe this school will and this one won't, well, that's where you come up with the maybe cost then, right? I mean, if we just did it, you're not gonna have those, right?
No, you're
We
right.
still have the same amount of school days.
Yep, there's no doubt about it. So
So-
we would definitely have to take a look at it because again, there are transportation concerns because there will be busing going when there usually wasn't busing going. And the location that you're gonna use, there would have to be a decision, and if we're gonna pick one school, what would be the most beneficial? And then there's also, it gets a little bit more complicated because if students wanted to opt in, then we're school of choicing students into a certain level. And so there's a lot of layers that really go into this deeper than just the theory, and so,
So then we open up a real big bag of worms if we go volunteer.
well,
I think so.
you could, but I really do truly think that sitting around the table with principals, with a couple of parents, with educators, and also with Lisa and the union at the table would provide us with all of those questions, and then we can start answering them and coming through and again, get something that's much more tangible than just theory. And I think a realistic timeline is within about a month or two, we could probably have something more solid to take a look at.
Would we be thinking at all for the following school year in September, or would you be thinking the year after?
If we start now, it could feasibly happen on a pilot basis, at a smaller basis. I
But
think
you're probably
converting
certain-
all of them
Yeah.
would be very difficult.
And you're probably starting July, then sharing two and start
Yeah.
September, because that's where we're gonna be
Because
rolling
they have
from.
that they have that 3 week break at the end of the
Sure.
regular school year.
Right.
Yeah.
Before they start up on the 4-day week.
If we start working now, it's feasible. And again, I think that the time is right for it. And again, not that money is the only issue, but it also is something it's important to us as well too. And if the governor's gonna say, hey, if you're gonna go for it this year, we'll float you, well, we might as well jump at that opportunity. So again, we'd like to be in the position to be able to do that, so better to start now than to have to hurry and scramble and throw something together if it's not put together well.
I agree, let's do it.
Okay, we'll get a committee together, if that's the general consensus, we'll study it a little bit further, and we'll aim to have something concrete for you on paper, tangible by March.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else have anything else about that? Okay, thank you. Administrative report? Okay, board reports? Superintendent's report?
The beginning of the year has been one that has seen a lot of movement in the legislature. And there's been some simple things that have passed, and there's been some not so simple things that haven't passed yet, but are out and pending. So I'll start with a couple of the easy ones and we'll move on to a little bit more complex as we go through. The first piece of legislation that is passed, that is law, is it is now law that schools will have EpiPens on hand next year. And so how it's actually going to be funded is still up in the air, but we will be having staff trained over the summer on how to use EpiPens, how to look for the signs of it. So if students do have an allergic reaction, we will have those on hand. The school board is going to be given a prescription, and we will have the ability to fill that prescription annually, so we have that training. The second new law that came through is $4.5 million was appropriated to establish a hotline, a bullying hotline, an anonymous reporting avenue for students to be able to call, text, email reports, anonymous reports about bullying, threats of violence, things like that. And that will be at a state level, and the state will then take those reports, obviously drive them down to the local level as well too. That's planned to be in place next year, so that's something that we'll be seeing coming in the fall. Some of the not so simple that are in the House right now, probably about 4 months back, I gave you guys a very lengthy report from the Michigan Council on Educator Effectiveness, and that was proposing how we should revise the evaluation process for teachers. And so that report came out, and that report was simply that, a report, and now the legislature has drafted a couple of bills to adopt some of those recommendations. And so for the past couple of years, we've been operating under a template that we've created to comply with some past laws that were passed. And these new bills that are currently in the legislature will take our current practices and reshape and remold them again. Again, these aren't law yet, but there's some significant changes that will be coming if these do go through, and they seem to have a little bit of support going through right now. The teacher data piece, it was previously published that by 15-16, 50% of a teacher's evaluation would be based on student growth data. This current law will push that back to 2017-18. So for 14-15, 15-16, and 16-17, it would be a 25-75 ratio. And then during 17-18, it would be a 50-50 ratio. And I think a lot of that is largely based on the fact that we still don't know what our assessment is. And so it hasn't really been tested, proven, put in place yet. So I think that had a lot to do with it. It also did suggest 4 frameworks that you could choose from: Danielson, Marzano, the 5 dimensions of teaching, learning, and the thoughtful classroom. I told you before that the state is going to put an RFP out, and one of those is going to win that RFP, and that's the one that the state is going to fund, and that's most likely the one that we'll probably jump on board with, because the training that's associated with some of these can be very lengthy, can be very expensive as well too. So a lot of changes came from these 2 House bills that are currently out there. We'll continue to watch those, but it is their goal, from what I've seen, to have those passed within a month or so, and that framework set in place for next school year. So changes coming for those as well too. That also applies to administrator evaluations as well, with certain templates suggested. And then finally, the last one, and I think the one that we as educators are really waiting for someone to finally make a decision on, is what assessment we're going to have next year. We know a couple of facts. The MEAP as we know it is probably gone. The Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium, the SBAC, the one that we've been preparing for a couple of years, has been met with a bit of controversy. There's a group out there, largely secondary educators, that are arguing for a test series called Aspire, and Aspire is written by ACT. And the logic from this group is that if a college entrance exam truly is what the pillar is for colleges, what they want to see, then why wouldn't we have an assessment that's aligned with the ACT as you go through from grades 3 on through? And there's a lot of logic in what they say. The opponents of Aspire say that it's not closely aligned to Common Core, and the debates rage back from there. This is in committee right now. It hasn't left the committee yet, and we are watching this anxiously, because as I've told you many, many times, we are sitting on a pot of trade grant money, waiting to get our technology infrastructure ready for whatever assessment may come next year. But regardless, we do have our Common Core standards implemented and ready to go, and we're just waiting for the assessment to be named so we can start preparing ourselves with technology, and also getting ourselves ready timeline as well to prepare. On a different topic, the Senate Fiscal Agency posted their revenue estimates. Those have been confirmed, and they look very good for education. There is a definite pot of money that's out there, and now the big question is, what are they going to do with it? Are they going to give it to us? And we don't know that answer yet, because the governor hasn't released his budget. Usually, when we send Ms. Holderby up to her business directors conference, they will give her an estimate and say you can expect this much per kid. But at this last conference, they looked at her and kind of gave we don't know. I think one thing that we can assume is that there will be money allocated to education. I think that early childhood is going to get a pot of money, and I think that there will be other pots of money released, but will be earmarked. I think that there will be money that's earmarked for schools that are going to be going to year-round school. I think there'll be other amounts of money that'll be earmarked for schools adopting best practices. I highly doubt we can anticipate seeing a $150 to $200 general increase per student. I think there may be a small increase per student with other pots of money that are earmarked. Again, that's just a guess and an assumption. I could be completely off. But the good news is that there will be pots of money. They may have a couple of strings attached to them, but it doesn't look like we're going to be dealing with an FTE decrease next year, which is a positive thing. Yeah. And then finally from me, I sent you in the last Friday a letter that we've been approached by AT&T, and AT&T would like to lease a section of ground next to our cell phone tower. That tower is owned by T-Mobile, and AT&T wants to put an antenna on that tower. We don't actually own the tower, so AT&T would have to lease through T-Mobile to put the antenna up, but then they need to have ground supporting structure around that. And so we currently have that lease offer with our legal representatives. They're taking a look at it for us, and if that comes back through, then I'll probably bring that to the Board of Education for approval, because it's a revenue that would help enhance our current budget. That's it.
I have a question about when you were talking about evaluation. You had given us the evaluation timeline memo that Mr. Skalka gave to the China board about how it's put together backwards.
You're right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there an idea or a remedy for that, or are we kind of stuck with it? I mean, we evaluate the superintendent in March. The superintendent's evaluating the administrators before and after that, and the teachers get evaluated before and after that, so that it's, we're evaluating, if we're going to evaluate the board, is going to evaluate the superintendent based on student growth and teacher performance and all those things. And those assessments and those evaluations haven't been, because it's done backwards. What is the answer to fix that, or is there one?
Well, the answer is you're okay if you're okay with being behind, because that's the way that you have to do it now. So my evaluation is next month, and we just today got our preliminary MEEP data released to us, and it doesn't come in any type of percentage form. It's just a bunch of Excel charts that I have Mr. Latos diving into all day long. And that will be embargoed for at least another month, perhaps 2 months before we can release that publicly. And so that data isn't in, and our high schoolers don't take their assessment until March. And if you're lucky, you'll get that by Cinco de Mayo. And so your evaluation timeline is off when you do that. The ideal would be for the evaluation most likely to be in June. But I think that to give a clear recommendation, we need to wait and figure out what the new assessment is going to be and what the timelines are on those assessments. And so in theory, what we've heard is that the students are going to go through, take the assessment, hit submit, and within 48 hours, we're going to have the results. And that will be absolutely amazing and awesome. And every educator in the room is going to be excited about that. That's theory. Yep. Yeah, and I'll believe it when I see it, because we've heard a lot of things before. But if that can be done, timelines can be very drastically different. And so to truly have this correct, my student growth data is based not only just on assessment scores, but also on the number of administrators that meet their targets. And the administrators' evaluations are based on the number of teachers that meet their targets. And so the teachers don't have their data, so the administrators can have their proper eval. And if the administrators can have the proper eval, then mine truly isn't authentic as well too. So I think that there needs to be a change in timeline. I think that would be the smart thing to do, but I also think that we shouldn't put a bunch of work into something until we know specifically what is going to come from the state. And once we know that, then if half of what they say is true, it should be a lot easier to make things make sense, so you're not retroactively applying student growth data to a current evaluation.
Do we have to evaluate the superintendent in February? I mean, is that law?
I think it's before April.
It's based on what you put in your contract.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that could be possibly something in the contract for the future superintendent, that we would have it written that we evaluate in June.
Or once we have a new superintendent with the contract, like what ours looks like now, and the assessment comes in and the evaluation timelines change and what have you, so that we know better when exactly we should evaluate that person, then at their next evaluation, we could make a change to the contract with an addendum or whatever to the contract to make that change, right?
Yeah, there's a little bit of time again on this. It's if these data pieces all fall in line, it's 2017-18 before 50% of that evaluation has to be based on growth data. By that time, I think it should be clear what's happening and what's going on. But personally, I wish that it would be in place now, where I could be evaluated on practice this year rather than retroactive as well too. And I think that most administrators would agree the same. And so I think patience, but keep an eye out to what's happening. And when it comes time for the Board of Education to negotiate a new contract with the superintendent, hopefully by that point in time, the state has released some sort of timelines for us, so we know when assessments are going to be taken, and hopefully when results will be available as well too.
Do you have some buildings lined up to take the Smarter Grounds pilot this spring?
We do. Elementaries, who signed up for the pilot right now? Yep.
I took it last year.
Back there. Yep, we do.
That's it?
Yes, sir.
All right, visitors and their requests? None. Action items, approval of the KSS invoices.
I'd like to request to recuse the front of the vote, please.
I'll make a motion that Susan Treville Cox should be recused from the vote on this motion due to a possible conflict of interest. Been moved and supported, any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes.
I'll make a motion that the Board of Education approve the payment to KSS Enterprises in the total amount of $3,208.28 for the purchase of custodial supplies.
Support.
It's been moved and supported, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That passes. Motion to adjourn.